Sound waves are variations in air pressure caused by vibrations that send the wave through a medium, most commonly air. Sound waves rise with positive pressure and fall with negative pressure, similar to the motion of a wave at sea. When you're recording one source with multiple mics, you might be capturing its sound waves in different parts of their cycle, and therefore have tracks playing positive and negative sound waves simultaneously, which will, logically, cancel each other out. This phenomenon is phase cancellation, or phasing, and it's an important concept to remember if you want to record your own production. When considering a sound wave's polarity, we refer to the sound wave's phase as positive or negative. Microphone preamps have a polarity switch, which reverses the source's polarity 180 degrees, making a positive phase negative and vice versa. These switches are marked either by the words polarity or phase, or sometimes denoted as either a circle with a line going through it or by a 180 degree sign. These switches are useful when two or more recorded tracks are completely out of phase and are canceling each other out, which can be due to mic positioning or poorly wired cables. But more often than not, the phase relationship between two mics aren't completely aligned or reversed, but instead somewhere in between. This is the most common form of phasing. Slight timing differences between two mics can create some degree of cancellation and a pretty distinct sound that in extreme situations is very uncomfortable, while in less extreme situations can just thin out your recording. For example, here's a source in phase, and here's the same source out of phase. The differences can be slight, but still worth the effort, because all these little adjustments add up to a fuller, bigger sounding recording. Phasing issues occur when microphones are at different distances from the same source. These differences might be very small and can be solved by simply adjusting the position of the mics. Sometimes less than an inch to any direction will do the trick. And if you want to prevent the problem to begin with, you can measure the distance between the source and your microphones and get pretty close phase relationships from the get-go. Recording studios might have EQs and compressors that your signal can go through. And although these tools will be covered in the mixing chapter, I want to note that processing your signal with either an EQ or compressor can change your signal's phase and will require another phase check, which is simply flipping the phase and making sure that things are well intact. Here are overhead channels, snare, and bass drum tracks playing together with no processing on them. And here's what happens when I process the overhead channels with some EQ. For this reason, EQs oftentimes have a phase flip button on them. So as you go on processing your tracks, flipping the phase once in a while might come in handy, especially if you're doing heavy processing. Before I explain this phenomenon, we need to remember what the difference is between mono and stereo. Stereo signals are actually two tracks played together, where one track is being sent to the left speaker and the other to the right speaker. Mono signals are one signal that is sent to both speakers equally. Stereo gives us the option to play and hear tracks that are out of phase because they are projected through different speakers. But as you now know, when you have tracks that are out of phase summed together, they will cancel each other more obviously, and therefore make your track sound different when played in mono. There's an ongoing discussion in the pro audio world about how important mono compatibility is. I personally think that our goal as producers should be nailing our productions in any situation, so I do care about mono compatibility. But what's important to know in one way or the other is that the effect phasing has in mono will be different than in stereo. And even if you like the effect phasing has on your track, double check your sources because it might not work so well. When used tastefully, phasing has a psychoacoustic effect that makes things sound wider. This can be used creatively in our recordings, it's used in synthesis techniques, and in various mixing tools as well. Using phasing as an effect will oftentimes be very mild because of the inconsistency it will bring to the mono version of the song. And when it's audible, it can, again, be somewhat uncomfortable to listen to. Hearing and noticing phase will be a skill you will develop the more you record. Until you are completely confident, here are a few tips that will help you keep your phases in check. When you record multiple mics on a source, give the tracks a listen both in mono and in stereo, and just see what happens. Phase cancellation will be more obvious in mono, and you will better know what to address. You can also record a piece of audio, zoom in, and see how well intacted the phases are. Although, as a general rule of thumb, you should use your ears more than your eyes when you're making music. This will give you an indication of how much you need to move the mics in order to get the phases together. Even if you think everything sounds great, flip the polarity switch and just see what happens. You might be surprised. Don't leave phasing issues for editing or mixing. Get it right in the recording stage. Move the microphones around, invest the time needed, and get things sounding great. Because some things that are really simple to fix in the recording stage are very challenging or sometimes impossible to fix afterwards.